here is this is the beginning of the symptoms, right? The tenthers, the Tea Partiers, the radical who thought they were radicals. They thought they were with the founders and all that. What they're realizing is that they're with the middle class. They're with the idea of a middle class, and that the billionaires who are funding the Tea Party and the multimillionaires like Dick Armey who are renting the buses and moving people around are not. They don't give a rat's patootie about the average working person. In fact, they spit on them. They ridicule them. People like Jane Cunningham. She's the Republican representing the 7th District of the state of Missouri. Her telephone number is 573-751-1186. It's on our front page over at thomhartmann.com. You can give her a call. She has proposed a law which says, and I quote, this is from the bill's official summary. This isn't my liberal interpretation. This is the actual bill's summary. This act modifies the child labor laws. It eliminates the prohibition on employment of children under age 14. Restrictions on the number of hours and restrictions on when a child may work during the day are also removed. It also repeals the requirement that a child ages 14 or 15 obtain a work certificate. Children under 16 will be allowed to work in any capacity in a motel, resort, or hotel where sleeping accommodations are furnished. That used to be explicitly illegal because of child prostitution. It also removes the authority of the director of the Division of Labor Standards to inspect employers who employ children. Removes the authority. The director of the Division of Labor Standards can no longer even look at a facility that employs children. And it removes the authority of the director of the Division of Labor Standards to require them to keep certain records for children they employ. It also repeals the presumption that the presence of a child in a workplace is evidence of employment. Now, this is not just one crazy lady. This isn't just, a Michelle Bachmann who, I don't quite know how to characterize Jane Cunningham. I'm assuming Sean has invited her on our program and she's declined. If not, we certainly shall. And if she accepts, I will treat her with respect. But this isn't just her. The freshman senator from Utah, Mike Lee, has come out and said that he believes that because the Constitution doesn't specifically prohibit child labor, that the child labor laws are unconstitutional. Forget about the fact that in 1941, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of child labor laws. Nonetheless, he thinks that they're unconstitutional. We should go back to 1918 when the Supreme Court actually ruled them unconstitutional. And I have some doubts about this current court, that they may well do that and rule them unconstitutional. So here you have the Republican freshman senator from Utah praising this 1918 case that struck down the Keating-Owing Act of 1916. The case was Hammer versus Dagenhart, which said that basically in 1918, the Supreme Court said, you can't stop children from working. Sorry. And it wasn't until 41 that the court reversed itself. But the Republicans want to take us back to 1918. This is all about reversing the New Deal. That's ultimately the question from that old labor song. Bob in Tahlequah. Bob, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call. I just want to chime in with you here. And what's going on in Wisconsin is it's a war on the poor, and it's going on all over the country.
Oh, it's a war on working people. It's an effort to make them poor.
It's a war on farmers. It's a war on gardeners. It's a war on freedom of choice and democracy all around our country.
Yep.
And it's going on big time. And what's going on in Wisconsin with the people fighting back, it's going to spread like wildfire. And let's hope that it does.
Yeah. And let's
hope that we have enough sense to approach this situation with sensible arguments, and we've got to stop compromising what we really believe is the framework for new industry and new manufacturing jobs in this country. Not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody wants to continue spending money on education well into their 30s and then have such a debt to pay back. Not everybody wants to live that way of life, and we shouldn't be forced to.
No.
Thank you.
Skilled work with your hands. I've told the story a million times. My dad worked 40 years in a tool and die shop. Skilled work with your hands should be enough to raise a family in the United States. And, the fact that we've gone from 30% manufacturing under Reagan to 11% today makes it a whole heck of a lot more difficult. But you're absolutely right. And this is hopefully what's going on in Wisconsin is the fuse being lit, the flame being lit of a progressive revolt, of a progressive uprising, of a progressive version of the Tea Party. Now, it won't be like the Tea Party because there aren't billionaires behind it. There aren't, there isn't a national PR apparatus other than the unions, and the unions have been fairly enfeebled since Ronald Reagan. We've seen union membership go from 20% when Reagan came in down to, nationally now, private membership is 7-8%. But this has to be an awakening in America. It has to be awakening in America. Gail in Antelope, California. Hey, Gail, what's up?
Hey, good morning, Tom. I'm ready to fire up and get on a rant. Anyway, I want to talk about that jackass in Wisconsin. I heard him talking about, You're
talking about the governor, right?
Oh, that jerk, yes.
Yes.
All of his rantings about cutting all of these expenses and everything, yeah. I haven't heard him say a word about he's going to voluntarily cut his salary or eliminate his salary or cut the salaries or perks of all the legislatures. And you don't hear that from our congressmen and government either. They're always cutting all these programs. Have any of them volunteered to say, hey, well, we need to cut our salaries because we really can't afford to keep taking this money?
Even that is still buying into the Republican story, which is that it's all about cuts. Yesterday, the Financial Times pointed out that taxes in the United States right now are 2% below the 50-year average and 4% below where they were when Clinton was president and we produced a surplus. And if we simply went back to where Clinton was when we produced a surplus, 39% top income tax on income earned over $250,000, if we simply went back to that, right now we're 36%, that we would take care of much of our budget deficit. And over time, we would take care of much of our debt. And the governor of Minnesota is doing the exact opposite of what's going on in Wisconsin. The governor of Minnesota is saying, let's raise taxes on the top 5%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it needs to be. I mean, these people have lived with these absolutely gross tax cuts for years.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's time they paid their fair share. It's way past time. They need to start paying.
There you go. Well said. Thank you. Will in Blakely, Pennsylvania. Hey, Will, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how are you? Hey, I'd like to. This Jane Cunningham. I would assume you agree, but I'll ask you. I don't think she's working in isolation.
No.
I know you mentioned that at all. I think this is the Republican global strategy that they've been pushing. They've been doing for 30 years. They know exactly what they're doing, and they are so coordinated. All they're really doing is they're stretching the limits of what they claim they represent farther and farther and farther. And the Democrats, I hate to say it, foolishly continue falling for it. At some point, they're bordering on fascism already. Seriously.
They want to establish the equivalent of a Politburo. I debated a conservative last night on my TV show, and I pointed out that when Reagan went after labor unions, the main reason he did was because they were one of the major sources of funding for the Democratic Party. And he said, this is about defunding the Democratic Party. And I'm like, well, why are you so fond of a single-party state? It didn't work out so well in the Soviet Union. And they got no answer to that other than, we just think we should be in charge.
Right, but do you think you're right, of course? But don't you think that that the Democrats generally? I know there's always exceptions, but what happens? They don't understand. They really need to either do the same thing the Republicans doing in reverse, or the country is just going to. We're getting dragged farther and farther to the right. The Democrats, as you pointed out many times, we used to have a communist party, a real viable, a socialist party. They're gone. The Democrats, I think, need to start doing that now. They need to start. They need to put a flag in the ground that, pick a few, they have to coordinate a few of their own representatives saying, look, I'm a socialist. Well, I know I'm a communist. And to pull the country back, because if they don't do it.
Well, your point, Will, I think is well taken, and that is that there is no real left in the United States anymore.
There's not.
There's the center left. And I would argue that maybe I'm on the left. I call myself a democratic socialist, but even that's not the real left. That's
not. You're a conservative, Tom. You're a rational conservative.
I may well be. If you want to cast me in the mold of Dwight Eisenhower, but who I thought well of when I was 3 years old or 5 years old or however old I was when he was president, but. Well, both, actually. I was born in 51. He was elected in 52. But whatever it is, as a democratic socialist, as somebody who thinks that the United States really should be looking at the Scandinavian countries in Northern Europe for a model that works, I am not the far left. I am where I think the vast majority of Americans are, and frankly, the vast majority of people in the developed world are. And the Democratic Party is to the right of me, and the Republican Party is to the right of
the program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And unless we start waking up people to this fact and stop saying things like, oh, this guy supports Social Security, he's on the left. What? That's America.